Hello to you, my fellow printed weebs. You're very welcome to another episode of Community News from 3D Jake. All the news from the community and what's going on with us too. I'm joining you from the 3D Jake office in the center of Graz in southern Austria, a country in which if you just think that snow season is over, it starts snowing. Here's what's going on in 3D printing right now. Alright, as always, what is new in the shop first? And we have a few cool things. So first up are these rocker kits, which are these super intricate laser cut assembly kits for all sorts of stuff, actually. So we have marble runs, owl clocks, a 446-piece space shuttle. Fun for kids of all ages. We also got a few Proxon products, screwdriver set with ratchet and a bit set, and a hot wire cutter. We also have lots of new Cheaty Tech spares, such as the Q2 nozzles in bimetal and tungsten carbide. We've got filters, displays, fans, what have you. We also have their extruder cooler, which I would love to put on a different hot end. Cool your extruder and print PLA in a 60-degree chamber if you're into that. And we also got a bunch of new colors from Spectrum. I'm really loving their pastel selection. Awesome stuff. Okay, one cool thing that people are talking about right now is CNC Kitchen's video on anti-aliasing for FDM prints. Now, you probably know about this for resin printing. It's been around for quite some time in resin slicers, but this is for FDM prints, and specifically, it's to combat stair stepping. When your printer prints, it does this with layers. All of these are flat, they're parallel to the build plate, so when you print an incline, it can't just print the inclined part, it prints it in flat layers. Because of this, you get a stair-like look. The shallower the angle, the more apparent it is, and the larger your layer height, the more apparent it is. This new anti-aliasing feature sort of blends those steps together by making very, very tiny adjustments in the Z height within each layer. This is actually sort of a mild form of non-planar printing, but without the absolute necessity of using specialized nozzles for clearance. And actually, depending on your layer height, the adjustments can be like really, really small. Because we're talking about one layer at a time, they're always going to be less than your layer height. So depending on the layer height, it could be like 50 microns or something. Having a smoother surface here can drastically reduce the amount of work you need to do with painting and sanding after printing in order to get super smooth surfaces. And also, whether you're printing 0.1mm layer heights or 0.3mm layer heights, you're still getting the same roughness. So for those of you who have been using something like variable layer heights in your slicer in order to get smooth surfaces for domed parts, with a little bit of polishing, this feature could be incredibly useful for you. Okay, in more technology news, MIT have 3D printed a electric linear motor on an E3D Toolchanger. So while it is very cool that they have 3D printed a working electric motor, it is even cooler that they have done this on an open source hobbyist device. So they actually modded this printer so it has four different tools, I should say. So one is a regular FDM extruder, I believe it's a Hemera. The next tool was a pellet extruder, this is the Mahor V4, and the next one was a custom ink extruder. And the very last one was a heater for curing the ink. PLA was chosen as the dielectric material, this is the insulating material, and then a conductive ink was printed along the dielectric as the conductive paths. And then the heater tool, this cures the conductive ink, and then they use the pellet extruder to extrude nylon with magnetic powder in for the magnetic material. 3 hours later, they have this motor, basically, but it needs to be magnetized, and then after that, it's working completely. That is so cool. I also saw this cool new full-color 3D printer, which is going to be launching on Kickstarter soon. This is the INU 3D. Full color, 500,000 color capability. Looks really interesting. Very, very similar to Mimaki printers or the upcoming FlashForge CJ270 printer. Looks really awesome. I thought it deserved a quick mention, but of course it's probably going to be out of range in terms of budget for most of us, because it's going to be launching on Kickstarter for about €7,000, I think. And then at retail, it's going to be about €10,000. Quite expensive, but keep in mind, Mimaki printers cost like €30,000, and I think the FlashForge CJ270 is marketed as going to be sold at €3,000, so considerably cheaper than this. But yeah, so far there's no news on the FlashForge printer. I don't know. We'll see. Fingers crossed. It is actually insane how much the price has reduced on these kind of printers now. 30,000 euro down to, what, 3,000 euro. Nuts. In more photopolymer news, we have DISH. This is the digital incoherent synthesis of holographic light fields, which is what scientists have dubbed their new volumetric printing technology. If you're not familiar with volumetric printing, this is similar to resin printing, specifically DLP printing, where you basically have a patterned light that is projected on a vat of photosensitive resin, similar to what you would use in a normal resin printer. The vat rotates and the light changes pattern depending on the geometry of your model, and then in a very, very, very short time, you have a fully 3D printed model. And this is interesting because it makes printing faster by an order of magnitude. People have used this technique to print benchies in 40 seconds, which is crazy. So DISH is exactly the same as this, except they rotate the light source instead of the vat of resin. And because of this, they can achieve greater precision and better light control. And with this technique, they have been printing millimeter scale models in 0.6 seconds. 0.6 seconds. I thought my 8-minute benchy was impressive. Don't expect this technology to be in your workshop anytime soon. These are early days. In Prusa news, they now have a new glow filament, UltraGlow. Glow filament can be underwhelming. The glow is weak. It fades very quickly. It's good for a laugh, but it's not a very useful filament. UltraGlow, however, is designed to be visible even 6 to 8 hours after initial charging, and it glows strongly for several minutes after charging. It's pretty cool, and it also uses PETG as the base material instead of PLA, so I guess they're marketing this for a more functional application instead of glowing articulated octopuses. Orca Slicer 2.3.2 beta came out a couple of weeks ago, and we have some very interesting updates. So now we can fine-tune flow rate for inner walls, outer walls, first layers, sparse infill, solid infill, supports, and gaps. In the past, we just had general flow and then flow for top and bottom layers. That was it. So if you ever had wrinkles in your outer walls, this can help. There are some changes to how brims are applied for elephant's foot compensation, updates on ironing direction that avoids tiger striping, bridge density can now be set to over 100%, there are updates on multi-line infill that improves smoother paths and better wall overlap, there are updates on small area flow compensation, updates on seam transitions, and there are more multi-material settings for ironing. You can now do this per filament instead of just via the process profile. Awesome stuff from everyone who contributed. Lastly, Thingiverse got acquired by Myminifactory. I actually forgot Myminifactory existed. And Thingiverse? Yeah, Thingiverse has been stagnant for a long time. They're still very relevant. I have to add this because it's still a very used resource in the community. According to their About section, they have more than 2.5 million models. Printables have 1.2 million, and MakerWorld have an unknown number. So it's obviously a very great resource, but it's losing visibility. So will that change? I'm optimistic here. So MakerBot started Thingiverse a long time ago, and it was the #1 place on the internet to go to get your 3D models. Later, Stratasys bought MakerBot, and then MakerBot and Ultimaker, they merged, and now Myminifactory has acquired Thingiverse. This time, it's a bit different. Myminifactory are not a big 3D printer manufacturer. They are a hosting site, and they have been delving into different genres popular in the community. They own Umagine, a site for selling your own RC designs. They're also involved in the open source initiative Soulcrafted, and they operate Scan the World, which supports people sharing cultural artifacts in the form of free-to-download models. I am optimistic that this can be a rebirth for Thingiverse and help them rekindle their original MakerBot ethos. Alright, that about does it for this month. As always, links to all of the stories and products are down below. We'll be back with another video next week, so until then, later.